Well, I think maybe first I should offer an apology for having incorrectly assumed that you were a moderate Muslim. Um, I'll take your word that you're an atheist, and certainly there's no reason for you to lie about that. Certainly the rational nature of your arguments certainly suggests that you are not someone who is held to any kind of dogmatic belief system, which is good. But the reason I thought so was because of your sympathy for moderate Muslims, and it is sympathy, and you yourself stated that you favor with ordinary people, whatever ordinary people is supposed to mean. You know, maybe we'll have a chance to get into that at some point. But I took some notes, and I'd like to address the points you raised. Because you raised a lot of points in the video. I'm sure I could not remember them all while rambling. So, first of all, the idea that there's this blurring of the distinction between radical Islam and all of Islam and moderate Islam. Well, that's the risk with anything. Overgeneralization is part of the human condition, and you know, it takes some caution on the part of individuals in order to be able to distinguish between the two. But you know, the people who are going out there and they're burning flags and they're raising a ruckus and making death threats, these are leaders of the Islamic faith. You know, the death threats against Salman Rushdie for writing the satanic verses, these were edicts, fatwas, that were issued by clerics, okay? So this is, when you say moderate Muslims, these are not people who are mainstream Muslims in the sense that they're certainly not clerics. They're not the leaders of Islam, okay? These are the leaders of Islam. A great many of them do believe that insulting the Prophet or heresy of that kind is punishable by death, okay? And I guess for Salman Rushdie it's because it was apostasy, heresy and apostasy, you know, which is punishable by death according to Islam, you know, which I have to, you know. So, true, there are many shades of gray between the radical Islam and the moderates you speak of that mean absolutely no harm and would never dream of harming another person in the name of their religion, okay? So there's all sorts of spectrum in between, okay? And we specifically target the most extreme, figuring those are the easiest targets, okay? That's, you know, first things first, let's deal with the most aberrant behavior first, and radical Islam. That's to be dealt with first. Other more minor affairs maybe we can deal with later, and maybe we can be more patient on those. But, you know, our patience is wearing really thin on radical Islam and being threatened and having artists murdered, like Theo van Gogh, murdered for criticizing Islam. There's no place for that in Western society. You say that these people belong in jail? Well, sure, violent people go to jail, but only after they commit acts of violence. And, you know, these, you know, and who do you put in jail when it's a suicide bomber, okay? A suicide bomber, you can't put a suicide bomber in jail, right? So the idea that you're going to use normal law and order against people with a dogmatic faith like this, who are fanatics and believe that that's by committing some act of violence, they're going to go to paradise in an act of martyrdom. You know, how do you combat something like that, right? So, moving right along, people have a right to their feelings. You know, that may well be true, but, you know, people also own their own feelings. There are many different reactions you can have to something that someone says to you, okay? Words have different effects on different people, and each person has their own unique personality, and they get angry or sad about different things that people say all the time, okay? So it's important to empathize, but when you're speaking out in public, you cannot possibly avoid hurting someone's feelings. Someone who is irrational, who has no rational reason for feeling the way they do, but it triggers some memory or some associated memory. I mean, if you studied psychology, and I'm thinking you probably have, you'll know that people own their own feelings, all right? And that the responsibility others have for avoiding hurting another person's feelings is kind of a very fuzzy boundary, all right? So, while people can take things any way they like, my responsibility for the way they feel is, quite frankly, I look at my own intent, and did I intend to do that to someone? And I judge myself based on my own intent, okay? If I intend to hurt people, then I would judge myself very severely. But if I don't intend to hurt people and they take it as an offense, to me, that's their responsibility. I don't see why I should change to please others who have an irrational reaction to something I've said, okay? For who knows what reason, maybe some childhood experience, okay? Some issues they have yet to work out with their psychologist, for example, okay? People can be very irrational, all right? And let's say I don't cater to irrationality, all right? I can empathize with it, but I don't sympathize with irrational behavior. My goal, if you were to call it a goal, my intent with all of this is being an atheist. I would like more people to be atheists and use rational thought, to think rationally, to use their brains and not have dogmatic beliefs that they don't question, and live mostly unconsciously using their intuition for everything and never questioning their own assumptions, okay? That is the kind of thing I think as a civilization we need to fear, is people who overgeneralize and have very irrational assumptions, okay? All right. So let's judge people as individuals. For the most part that's true, but an individual belongs within certain organizations, and they choose to belong within that organization to some extent. I mean, certainly children don't choose which religion they belong to. They're forced into it by their parents, so there is some lack of free will there in terms of what organizations they belong to. Now, I agree that we shouldn't categorize people according to race and other things. To me, that's not an organization that they willingly belong to, but a religion is. A religion is an organization that people willingly belong to. And if you're not going to judge people based on their religion, what are you going to judge them on? Yeah, they're individuals and they've got individual beliefs, but if they subscribe to a religion, especially if they believe a religion, every part of it, as some Muslims do, as many Muslims do, then isn't that something that is worthy to judge people on? They're not atheists, they're not being rational, okay? I judge them as being irrational people. Now, my goal is to make them more rational. Now certainly we can argue about what methods bring out the rationality of people that make them more rational, more open to suggestions, and more open to the idea that perhaps their long-held beliefs are not necessarily correct, okay? So we can talk about what methods are effective, but I guess the question I have for you is, do you believe that more people should be rational and atheist? Or do you really believe that people need religion, and the religion is some fundamental part that we need to preserve, that religion is something we want to protect as opposed to something we want to wither away, and we have freedom of religion because we're appealing to the rational side of people, okay? So that's where I'm confused about your intent, all right? So it would help if you could clarify that for me. So thanks for watching. Bye.